You know something's wrong when the minister of music and worship walks up to the pulpit during sermon time. Sorry about that. I'm not sure how I was fortunate enough to get the Obadiah assignment. It's the shortest book in the Old Testament whose only message is one of condemnation. The entire prophetic uttering is one of gloom and doom. And that may be one of the reasons I was assigned this particular prophet. I am the cynic on staff. It may be my age or my longevity in ministry or the fact that I have had plenty of experiences, good and bad, through which to filter what is being said. But my assessment of things tends to be more practical than visionary. The assignment may have come because of my particular ministry. I sometimes say, only half jokingly, I have the greatest job in the world. I get paid to tell people they're wrong. I stand in front of a music group and tell them they're singing the wrong notes, the wrong rhythms, using poor diction, or just totally missing the interpretation of the piece. One of the focal points of music ministry is to tell people that they are doing what they are doing incorrectly so that they will do it right. So with that in mind, I will share my assessment of Obadiah. As mentioned, there is nothing positive in the prophet's message. The entire book is addressed to the Edomites, their sins against Judah, and the punishment that will come to them. Now, the Edomites were related to the Israelites. Israel descended from Jacob, and Edom from his twin brother Esau. When the twins were born, Jacob, the second twin, was holding on to the heel of Esau, as if he was trying to get ahead of him even in birth. You probably remember the story of Esau selling his birthright to Jacob for food, and then Jacob turning around and tricking his father Isaac into giving him the family blessing. There was real animosity between these two nations that had festered for centuries. When Israel was fleeing from Egypt on the way to the Promised Land, they requested permission from the king of Edom to pass through his land. It was denied, showing that hatred was already festering between these two nations. The timeline of the prophet Obadiah is a bit tricky, but most believe it's in the middle of the 6th century during the time of exile. Our psalm reading from earlier is from this same period and captures the feelings of the Israelites while they were in exile. The book has 3 main sections in its short structure: the proclamation of judgment against Edom, the indictment and reasons for that judgment, and then finally the day of the Lord. The overall theme is that Edom will be judged for their attitude against God's people in their time of crisis and need. Imagine a group of people about whom God has nothing good to say. It must certainly be an evil nation to anger God so. You ever had someone or some group in your life so depraved that you had nothing good to say about them? I have. His name is Delbert, and that is his real name. I use the real name because even after 40 years, memories of him bring up anger and indignation in me. Yes, 40 years is a long time, and I have certainly mellowed some, but not enough to have anything good to say about Delbert. It goes back to college days and the pledging of a fraternity. In those days, hazing restrictions were non-existent, or if there were some guidelines, they were rarely enforced. That allowed fraternities to do pretty much whatever they wanted during the pledge period. The way it worked was that pledges, those of us trying to get in, were at the mercy of the active fraternity members. We were supposed to do what they asked us to do, when they said to, and not question anything. The goal was to earn merits rather than demerits in order to be accepted. To earn those merits, we had to do all sorts of tasks. Some we can talk about, like laundry or cleaning or errand running. Other activities were done that shall remain secret. There were the usual harassing moments from the active members, but Delbert took it to another level. And for some reason, he took a particular dislike to me. No matter how hard I tried, I could never get any merits from Delbert. Whatever I did was not done well enough or fast enough. Or if I did well, Delbert would change the criteria so I would fail again. Finally, one day I thought I had the perfect circumstance to get his favor. Our university regularly brought in guest musicians to do clinics within their field of expertise. On this particular occasion, I was tasked with picking up a world-renowned clarinet player from the airport an hour away and bringing him to the school. Well, Delbert was a clarinet player, so I thought this would be the thing that would win him over. I approached him with pride to tell him about my task and that I would make sure Delbert met this famous person. The response was not nice and not repeatable, and I was sorely disappointed. A friend standing nearby heard all of this and assured me that there was never anyone who would please Delbert. Apparently, I was not the only one with nothing good to say about him. Now back to Obadiah. The prophet's message begins by listing the punishment that will be visited upon Edom. They will experience the loss of all their goods and wealth. Their financial resources will be subjected to total and complete destruction. Even those things they think safe will be destroyed. Edom will also find themselves totally alone. They will lose all their allies, even those with whom they had treaties. Edom in this day had a reputation for being very wise, and their wisdom was known throughout the world. In the Old Testament, there are vague references to this trait, but now no concrete examples remain of their insights and knowledge. Their wisdom has been erased from history. Edom will also experience a loss of all warriors. Their army will be shattered, broken, scared, and experience complete destruction. The nation of Edom will be totally destroyed. This is the prophecy part of Obadiah. None of this has happened yet, but God promised that it's coming. So what did Edom do to cause God to have nothing good to say about them? Our scripture lesson read a moment ago itemizes their transgressions. Jerusalem had been destroyed by the Babylonians. It was looted, and the temple was destroyed, and many Judeans were taken into captivity and sent into exile. It is into this situation that Obadiah appears with his list of sins. The sins were listed in such a way so that each transgression is increasingly worse. As Judah was being attacked and destroyed by the Babylonians, the Edomites stood back and gloated, celebrating the demise of Judah. They boasted about the events that led to the destruction of the nation and the city. Edom even joined with the Babylonians entering the city. They looted alongside them. As Judeans were trying to escape, the Edomites set up roadblocks to catch them, and then handed the captives over to the Babylonians. In other prophetic writings about this event, the Edomites were identified as the ones who set fire to the temple, causing its total destruction. The book ends with Obadiah declaring that the day of the Lord is coming. Pastor Barrett gave us an excellent explanation of what that means in his sermon last week. The day of the Lord is a condemnation to those who have wronged Israel. There will be judgment on all nations, especially on Edom. Obadiah only condemns Edom by name. And unlike the other prophets we will be studying and have studied, he says nothing against Judah. All of his condemnation is against Edom. When the day of the Lord comes, Judah will regain all territories that were lost in the Babylonian invasion. Their enemies, specifically Edom, will be utterly destroyed, and the kingdom of God will be established. Israel is experiencing a serious crisis at this point in their history. And Edom, rather than sympathizing and responding to their needs, betrays them. The sins of Edom show their attitude to be first passive about what is happening to Judah, then progressing to a much more aggressive state, actually taking part in the destruction and looting. Their lack of response to the needs of Judah are an act of betrayal against God and the people in need. While God, through Edom, has nothing good to say about while God through Obadiah has nothing good to say about Edom, the implicit message is that he is still with the people of Judah. The day of the Lord is a terrible time for all God's enemies, but it is a promise that things will get better for his people. There is also an implied warning to those accepting God to rescue them. God's people must not accept their plight passively or view the plight of others in a boastful way. Seeing needs around us should move us to show justice and support for the less fortunate. The day of the Lord, when God's kingdom will be established, requires a transformation of our own situation. Just as judgment will come to Edom because of their attitude and actions towards Judah, it will come to any person or group that treats others in the same way. Now, I doubt that anyone here has looted a city or burned a temple lately, but we may have stood by while we see others in need or being persecuted and done nothing to help. We may have gloated about their demise or mocked them in their need. We may have contributed to their hardship by purposefully neglecting to do what we can to help. Remember Delbert. He probably started with just a dislike for all fraternity pledges, but he quickly moved to being quite active in the hazing that went on daily. The last time I heard anything about him, he was unable to get a job in the music field. I do not know if it was because there were no positions available or because of his abrasive personality that would come through at each interview. Whatever the reasons, the report was that he was driving a taxi in his hometown. I admit, I felt vindicated when I heard that news. A person with a degree in music education who had treated me so poorly, who had acted so above everyone else, could only find employment in a profession that is unfulfilling for a person of his educational level. He experienced his day of the Lord. And then I realized, all this time I had assumed I was Judah to Delbert's Edom. I was the victor and he was the aggressor. Now, all the harassing and hazing that had been heaped on me was on him. He was paying for how he treated me. But as is often the case with God, a change of attitude was necessary on my part. I had now become Edom to him, gloating over his situation, not trying to help, probably even adding to his pain with my callousness. Obadiah was condemning people who treated others poorly. And while the direct message was to Edom, it applies to all, to me and to you. Being poorly treated in the past does not give me the right to treat others poorly. The exact opposite is true. I should be more aware of the trials and needs of those around me and do something to help them. I should not gloat over someone's hardships. I should not add to their difficulties with my indifference. I should not withhold my resources when I could do something to help. So, based on the message of Obadiah and my life experiences, allow me a suggestion. Live your life so that you will not become an Edom to others, because the day of the Lord does not end well for Edomites. To whom are you, Edom? To whom do you need to respond positively? What needs and injustices do you need to see to respond to and help? This is the time when you ask yourself those questions. This is the time you respond to God.